Hello, I'm Shelley Zhang. Welcome to Inside China. It's been 27 years since China first implemented the policy of reform and opening up. According to the World Investment Report issued by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development in 2004, China has become the world's hottest spot for foreign investment. There are two prevailing opinions about this trend among Western and Chinese scholars. One is that foreign investment can urge the development of both China's economy and democracy. The other is that by having foreign investment, China will be forced to obey international regulations, and that will decrease corruption. Some European and North American financial groups use this reasoning to persuade their governments to invest in China. In today's program, we talk with Chinese economist QingLian about where this strategy has been effective and where it's had pitfalls that are creating major problems for investors.
我觉得这个影响应该从两方面来评价。第一方面，第一呢，就是
I would like to explain it from two perspectives. First, foreign investment did bring China positive effects. From the taxes charged, it provided the Chinese regime with a huge amount of tax revenue. It also brought in new technology and managerial skills from Europe and the US.
管理制度啊，还有一点呢，就给中国解决了大量的就业机会。
Foreign investment is said to have created a lot of job opportunities. More than 2 million people work for foreign capital corporations. That means 2 million families are benefiting from it, and these people belong to those high consumption groups.
这些人实际上就是目前呢支撑中国高消费的一个主要群体嘛。还有一点呢，外国的这些投资者呢，因为在中国有太大的利益了。
And because of the huge profits, these consortiums try their best to persuade their government to embrace good relationships with China. This also releases China's diplomatic pressure from abroad.
为中国政府呢大大减轻了外交方面的压力。随着这个投资的增加呢，
As foreign investment increases, these foreign countries tend to neglect China's human rights issues and dictatorship. One good example is Germany. German specialists suggested their government cease criticism of the Chinese regime and stay on good terms with China.
For
the United States, there are two sides, the red group and the blue group. The blue group emphasizes human rights and ideological differences, while the red group places efforts on economic interests.
红队呢，就是主张忽视这些差别，就是和中国交往，就是看这个经济利益。那么克林顿时期是红队占上风。
During Mr. Clinton's time, the red group had the upper hand. When Mr. Bush gained power, the blue group started to prevail. Due to the Iraq War, the United States needed support from China, so the blue group didn't use its power as much as it could.
还有一点呢，也是我们中国人没有想到的，就是外国人的行贿方式，外国资本的行贿方式，就是移民办绿卡，帮这些贪官污吏的家属提供。
Another thing that Chinese people did not expect was that foreigners also have their own ways of offering bribes. These foreign countries help malfeasance by offering their families immigration status or citizenship, which provided these corrupt officials a way to get out of politics.
为什么呢？因为他有一个底线。 捞得差不多的时候，他在海外有一个基地，可以安全。
This is not good for China. Why is that? Because those corrupt officials do not have to care for the consequence of corruption. They know they can transfer their money to foreign countries safely. Therefore, the corrupted officials do not have to care for the pollutions, ecological damages, or social instabilities caused by corruption because they will not live in China.
他们可以不和中国人民共享被污染的政治生态环境。 也可以不和中国人民共享被他们的贪污腐败、政治黑暗呢折腾得千孔百川的中国社会。对外资进入中国，中国政府是一种期待。
The Chinese regime and intelligentsia have different expectations from foreign investment. The Chinese regime is satisfied with the outcome of foreign investment, which accounts for 40% of its gross domestic product. The other expectation was that foreign investment would help with economic liberalization and political democratization. This has failed.
外国资本进入中国将会促进中国的经济自由化，再进而推动中国的政治民主化。从这一点来看，这一点期待是落空了。记得我跟有一个朋友
I remember I had a debate with a friend who thought foreign investment would at least help decrease the corruption in China. He said, these international companies will force China to do things according to international rules, so the corruption will definitely decrease. I told him that this theory does not transpire in other countries such as India, Mexico, and Brazil. Moreover, they were all members of the World Trade Organization, and foreign investment companies did not change their corruption.
像印度也好、墨西哥也好、巴西也好，都是 WTO 成员国。为什么他们跨国公司到他们那去不能改变他们的贪污腐败，减少他们的，就能减少中国的？这是没有国际经验支持。第二个，本国的经验也不支持这个。我说像中国。
Foreign investment in China did not change the game rules of corruption. It did, however, force businessmen to play by China's rules. He then insisted that at that time, the main foreign investments were from Hong Kong and Taiwan. Because they are all Chinese, they have the nature of being corrupt. This I don't agree with. There was an interesting article that came out this year talking about foreign companies offering bribes to China. According to research, 60% of the 500,000 corruption cases in China over the past 15 years have something to do with foreign capital companies. For example, when French architect Paul Andreu was contracted for the National Theatre of China, people at his company reported that he got part of the project by bribery.
这些外资企业行贿中间最出色的就是电信产业。电信产业呢，那么摩托罗拉
Telecommunication industries mostly use bribery among foreign capital companies. Motorola is number one when it comes to bribery. The author of the book, Losing the New China, Ethan Gutman, who worked in China, talked about his experiences. He learned from a Motorola executive that the amount of a bribe usually equals 10% of the total value of a contract. China has always labeled itself as a heaven for those foreign investors. However, it resembles hell more so for business dealers who operate their businesses in accordance with the law of those malfeasance. You can't make money or enter the market in China without offering bribes. When in Rome, do as Rome does, or join in the evil doing.
如果你要想不贪污贿赂，你连那个市场要进入都进入不了。其实呢，外商到中国去需要通过行贿才能在中国打开市场呢，是一个公开的避免。
It is an open secret that foreign dealers can only enter the Chinese markets by bribery. In recent years, this kind of thing would happen constantly. Walmart is an example. The retail giant bribed the wife of Yunnan's head of Department of Foreign Trade and Economic Cooperation and was one of the exposed cases. On April 8, 2004, telecommunications giant Lucent fired 4 senior executives at its China operation due to corruption. Afterward, many Chinese newspapers reported it and questioned this decision. They thought it was not wise for Lucent to do such a thing. If the company still wants to stay on the Chinese market, they have to offer bribery. After firing the former executives, how would the new executives do business in China?
但是你行贿，你又处理你的高级主管，那么这个让继任的高级主管无法做。像美国就有一个反海外腐败法，贿赂。
There is an anti-international corruption law in the United States. Offering a bribe is an illegal act. Other European countries all have similar laws. They realized later, however, that without bribery, they would lose many opportunities and found it unfair that other companies were moving forward by using bribery. So countries from Asia, like Japan and South Korea, began to play the corruption game. As for North America and European countries, they gradually began to take part in this game with the persuasion of so-called Chinese experts.
然后就是欧美资本呢，就在一些所谓中国通的劝说晓谕下呢，也慢慢认识到这一条。有一种人是美国的跨国公司最喜欢聘请的人。
Children of high-ranking officials are easily hired by international American companies. These students can open the Chinese market for the company when they go back. They also know about the system and rules. They have a wide range of connections and networks and know how to offer bribes, how to use the lowest cost to gain the most profit. These bribes will be in their product's profit, and it is the consumer who pays for it.
因为这些成本、行贿成本，最后又打入他们产品的利润，最后还是消费者承担。反正企业呢，羊毛出在羊身上，所以呢，他们也在中国。
They know there is a rule in China called, if you want to gain, you must first give. The money slips into private pockets, and the cost is forced onto consumers. That is why cell phone fees in China are among the highest in the world. The foreign companies all know how to play this game now, and they do not feel unethical about it because they think that the Chinese people have already accepted these rules, so there is no need to change.
因为他觉得你们中国人自己都认同了这一套规则，我们有什么必要来改变你的？我记得在芝加哥的时候，有一个中国留学生。
When I was in Chicago, there was a Chinese student who told me that he felt humiliated by Americans. He said that when he was trying to get a driver's license, he failed the first time. Then an American student said to him, "Since Chinese people are so good at offering bribes, why don't you bribe the examiner?" So he felt insulted by the American student. I told the student that Chinese people did give that impression to people. Maybe the American student got this impression from a relative or friend who had the chance to talk to people investing in China. It's true. So instead of blaming others, it's more appropriate to examine ourselves and stop doing these wrong things.
我们自己来改善我们自己的形象，从我们自己做起，我们不做这些坏事啊。现在这个外商呢，普遍的认同了中国的游戏规则。
Foreign investors now all accept Chinese game rules. They are even wiser than those Hong Kong and Taiwan dealers when it comes to bribery. Hong Kong businessmen can only offer money and free travel to Hong Kong and Taiwan, but foreign businessmen can help the corrupt officials' children to immigrate, and they focus their efforts on those high-ranking officials at the Central Committee level. China only has one party. The Chinese Communist Party uses modern technical methods to support its dominion. People expected international corporations to force China to follow international regulations after joining the World Trade Organization. Now, everyone knows that if they want to make money in the Chinese markets, they have to follow the corrupted environment and learn how to offer bribes to Chinese officials.
体制啊，政府行为方式，但是现在大家已经明白了，不是国际的商业集团改变中国政府的行为，而是他们到中国去要赚钱，就必须顺应中国这种腐败的制度环境，就是学会怎么样贿赂官员。另外一个神话就是讲高科技网络的运营。
Another myth was that the internet would help the free flow of information. China would be forced to reform the press system, followed by political democratization. None of these are fulfilled. At first, the Chinese regime was very worried about the free flow of information through the web, until they found they could use investment to control the internet. Since then, they started to set up the largest firewall in the world, and now they're talking with some big international companies to build a huge monitoring system. It's called the Golden Shield Project. The system can watch, listen, and think. It has video and audio functions and can track anyone on the internet. This is why they could find and arrest people who say sensitive things on the internet. The system was finished in 2008, which made China the largest police state in the world.
这个系统全部完成呢是2008年。我相信这个系统建成以后，中国将成为世界上最庞大的一个警察国家。这个监控网络所需要的技术。
What techniques are needed for this monitoring system? Many famous high-tech companies have participated, like Cisco in the United States and Sun Microsystems from Canada. These companies assisted by providing technical help, including internet filters and viruses. Many of these companies originally wanted to help China with its economic development, thus leading to political democratization. They also wanted to help China by building a gateway to information that is not controlled by the regime. However, they did not keep their word. Instead, they helped China build a huge monitoring system, fully aware that the regime would not use it for furthering economic development. When questioned, they insisted that other companies were doing similar projects. If they hadn't done it, then other companies would have.
有人质问他们为什么要这样做的时候，他们振振有词地说：“我们不做，那别的公司也会做。”
There are some people who don't agree with this. For example, Gordon Chang wrote a book entitled The Coming Collapse of China, while Ethan Gutmann wrote Losing the New China. Gutmann's book described a typical ambitious Western young man who went to China to invest. He had the dream of helping with marketing and political liberalization when he first came to China. But in reality, it was all just the opposite. He found that foreign investment helped China to crack down on democracy. He belonged to the small group of people who grew a conscience and reflected on the entire situation, whilst the majority of them were assimilated. From my point of view, the myth that foreign investment can help China's economic liberalization and political democratization is extinguished.
这个神话是基本上没有了。
U.S. Internet security expert Greg Walton published a paper in 2001 called China's Golden Shield Project. The report criticized the, quote, immoral behavior of some Western companies that provide China with the technology to control people and to strangle freedom. They have intentionally and unintentionally become accomplices to the Chinese regime. Walton revealed how the Chinese regime used monitoring techniques from Western countries to launch massive raids after the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. The video cameras were made by Siemens Plessey Company, and the World Bank paid for their installation. These video cameras recorded everything that happened in Tiananmen Square in 1989. Chinese authorities then used the videotapes to identify democracy leaders and targeted them in raids during the crackdown. Walton warned governments to realize that technology is not neutral, it's a chameleon and will change color according to the environment. Some Western companies like Cisco have come under fire from the U.S. Congress for their roles in helping China censor its citizens and prosecute political dissidents. Although they may be doing business within Chinese borders, the West is still holding their own accountable for actions that would be considered unacceptable at home.